Bring up your document.
Salete, mihi nomen est Stella et hoc est Backward the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon Podcast, episode 242 for January MMXXIV. Backward the Oracle is brought to you by MileHighComics.com, your new and collectible comic book store. Mile High Comics has an inventory of over 5 million comics from the gold, silver, bronze, and modern age, and over 100,000 trade paperbacks. If you're not into the vintage stock, Mile High Comics also has a subscription service called the New Issue Comics Express, offering a discounted price for comics ready to hit the shelves. So if you're looking for vintage back issues or a great modern subscription service, be sure to check out MileHighComics.com. Well, this is somewhat of a special episode. The guy that you see on the screen and we'll hear from soon, some people use him for his body, but here on Back Row the Oracle, we use him for his brain. So please welcome one of my dear friends, erstwhile lover, Big D himself, Donovan Morgan Grant.
Oh, and what if you use both my body and my brain in two separate occasions? So, are you some of those people, or are you a distinct third? Me nodding.
Of course, of course. I did hear of a term at one point called a sapiosexual, which is a person who is attracted to intellectual people. I could
Mhm.
I think both of us could probably style ourselves that we're probably going to lean more towards romantic connections with people that are intelligent, I would say, than not.
Yeah, it makes you sound like the smart, contemplative, forward-thinking pervert.
Forward thinking pervert. Yes, yes, absolutely. Well, we are here to talk about, I mean, if you can tell by what Donovan is wearing, but what I am wearing, this little guy that's up here by Barbara that I have. We're going to be talking some Marvel's Spider-Man 2 that came out in, I guess it was December, on the PS5.
Y maybe November, maybe November, maybe
Okay.
November.
I mean, it was a tough time for me to
Yeah.
be sure, not being able to do something. Maybe it was earlier because if Josh was talking about bringing bringing it to Texas for the wedding, then it might have been earlier. I can always fact check that. But Donovan and I also are, well, I might be more overjoyed than he is. Currently, I'm watching White Stuff. And no, I'm not talking about cocaine, but White Stuff fall
Mm.
down from the sky. It snowed over the weekend. It's snowing now. It fills my heart with joy just to see it snowing here. But I mean, for you, it's caused some consternations to be sure, because you live on this huge hill.
Yeah, I live on this death hill. It's like it's on Sunday night. All the customers were saying, "Hey, what are you gonna do if it snows?" And I was like, "Oh, I think it's gonna snow like 2 days from now." And then we all looked outside and we were like, "Uh-oh." So we closed early and we skittishly went to the parking lot and I drove down the highway with both eyes wide open
Yeah.
and both hands on the steering wheel. And I just knew instinctively that I wasn't making the hill. I was pleasantly surprised I made it even to my neighborhood because when I was getting off of like the highway onto like the road down there, wasn't braking, I was sliding and stuff. So my car's been outside since Sunday. Today we're recording to date stamp this on a Friday. And I like snow as much as the next person, but like as you're an adult, some things that you enjoyed as a kid are really incapacitating when you're an adult.
Yeah.
Because like I can't go anywhere. And I my car does not have a four-wheel drive. So it's frustrating. I mean, it's not so much like, oh, I hate snow. It's just like I just hate the circumstances. It reminds me I went to deliver pizzas and twice my car got stuck on ice because I had to go to these treacherous addresses. But
Yeah.
I guess you can drive wherever you want because you're so happy.
I'm just happy enough to sit here and watch it, to be honest. School was out because as a teacher, I think there's more like leeway. As a sub, I don't have any responsibilities. When I'm back to teaching, obviously I'll be like working to fix plans and reschedule and everything. But we were off Tuesday and Wednesday, and then Thursday was a 2 hour delay, and then we're off today. Now I do, of course, work a second job. I close at Michael's. So Tuesday, because no one plowed my apartment complex and I was just hearing people skidding around the entire time, I ended up calling out. But today, yeah, I can just sit here and talk to you, and I'll probably do some UVA work since my final semester of grad school has begun. But other than that, yeah, yeah, I love it. I mean, that's why I hope to move someplace where there's more snow. So we'll see. Well, another thing,
I
yeah.
actually was very sorry, I actually was very productive the first day. I actually got a lot of DC work done.
Ooh,
And my Nightwing review. And edited Juno A, which I'll talk about later. So the first day was pretty productive, but now I'm kind of like a spinning top and just ready to leave. But that's enough. That's enough. That's enough. What are we talking about today?
I was just going to say that another thing that brings me joy, of course, are peaches. Peaches in the wild, peaches on social media, peaches in comic books. And we're going to talk, thank you. And we're going to talk about this juicy peach that you can see on the screen later, just because it seemed to have I seem to have seen this more before I even played the game that people were talking about it, or cake, I guess. I did have a Twitter poll because I wondered whose peach is juicier. Is it Venom's peach that you see on the screen, or is it our good friend Donovan's? And unfortunately, Donovan did not get a lot of love. Now it's only been up for like 20, maybe 15 hours, but three people out of the four that voted said Venom has a juicier peach, and only one person voted Donovan. And I can't vote on my own polls. So, Donovan, did you vote for yourself?
I don't think I did.
Okay.
I'm pretty
Ah,
sure I didn't. Well, it's also because like the only time I've ever showed pictures of myself on Twitter that aren't kind of like every now and then I'll show progress photos, and those are relatively tame. They're no more lewd than your average Chris Hemsworth image.
yeah.
Was when I did that photo shoot last year.
Yep. Yep.
So I don't know how many people are aware of my second Instagram page.
Sure.
So that's probably why Venom was highly skewed because more people have played that game than signed up for my Instagram page,
I
which is
understand.
fine.
Yeah. 44 people have seen the post, but I guess they just kind of scrolled past it. But now I just wonder who is the person who voted for your peach. It wasn't Harry because I asked if he was on X. He's no longer on X. Maybe it's some like dark wolf that we wouldn't like, Professor Cheapskate. He's the one who voted for you. Someone just out of left field.
Maybe it was Ian.
Maybe it was Ian Prime. Okay. So we're done with the funny business now. We'll get back to that a little bit, but we are going to talk about Marvel Spider-Man 2. Just to, I guess, get it out of the way immediately. Did you enjoy this game?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Okay. And I would agree. I enjoyed it. I think both Donovan and I are 100% completed. I've got the platinum. I'm waiting to play it again when New Play Plus comes out so I can like focus on the story because I'm sure I missed things rather than getting all of the going to different hideouts and all the collectibles and things like that. But I feel like you and I shared a similar story because with each system that's come out, I personally have said like that's the last system I'm getting, which is like PS3, last system I'm getting. And then Uncharted 4 came out. I'm like, okay, fine. And you ended up getting your PlayStation 4 for Marvel Spider-Man 1, and then, okay, now we're getting all of this stuff with Marvel Spider Man 2. You and I think, are both hoping that it's going to be cross gen or just multiple generations. So we've got PS4 and PS5, but no, it's PS5. So we both have this hard decision. You end up getting it. I'm still waiting because I just feel like, oh, I can't do it. It's just like financially, I think irresponsible. I was going to wait. And we know I've already told the story about my mysterious benefactor that got it for me. So both of us have gotten the system for this game, I would say. We were just so stoked for it. Um, Unfortunately, you had a bad time of it because of social media. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and kind of your experience playing it initially? Because you got it obviously way before me, and I think you're more on social media than I am. So I did not get kind of the spoilers that you did.
Yes, you mentioned oh well Harry's not on X, I still call it Twitter. And I was like, I'm surprised I still am because I was kind of vowing by the end of the year to be off of it because I think Twitter has just have had no I talked about this on our end of the year episode when I was talking about the game on Questions We Don't Have Answers, that when I played the first game, um when I got I was actually on the phone with you and talking about getting a PS4 for the game, and I I didn't play the first Spider-Man game, I think, right when it came out. I think it had been out for a little bit and it gotten good reviews. I have no memory of social media just sort of swarming discussion on the game more than I would have wanted. So I played that game very easily in regards to, just having that unique experience, that personal experience. And it might be because of the algorithm, but I just feel that like the moment this game came out, everyone was just talking, so everyone had this singular like instrumentality experiment-esque like experience where everyone just knew everything. Like, oh man, I can't believe that Dr. Octopus is at the end of the game. I can't believe that this has happened. I can't believe that so it's Craven killed this character. I can't believe, and I was just like, guys, God, like it wasn't even like I'd gone weeks without and that the game had been out. It was like days. It was like 2 days. And it's not been just that. There's been exploring the end of the Marvels and various other things. There's just no sense of cordialness or whatever. And it just made me, I mean, I don't like comics Twitter anyway. You mentioned this last episode with people were talking about Birds of Prey, but like I feel
Yeah.
that like it's just been polluted with like the worst faith Zoomers who really don't ever know what they're talking about. Um, like I can get to that later on if should we tangent, but like I've really had it with social media, and it's primarily due to comics Twitter, which this game's fans are a part of. So when I was initially playing, like when I first played the main story, I was kind of just grinding through it just so I wouldn't be spoiled, and that definitely negatively impacted my experience with it because I was rushing through the story. I didn't do hardly any of the side quests at all. Maybe I did like the museum one or while I was doing the main storyline, but most of those I was just grinding through, and it wasn't fun. I mean, it wasn't as fun as it should have been. Now I really enjoyed this game, and much that has kind of been from the freed up experience after the main story when I was playing the side quest, and I wasn't spoiled on everything. There were some genuine surprises, so I can safely say that I really much enjoyed this game, although it was difficult going through it, and it wasn't even the game's fault. It was losers on Twitter,
Yeah.
basically.
Unfortunately. Yeah, I don't know what our responsibility is. I guess you're right, use the word, being cordial. I think at least having a sensitivity that, hey, if you're in Australia and you got it 20 hours in advance of US, then maybe don't, allow people to catch up and experience things without spoiling it. But I don't know. It's either we can give them grace and be like they're just so excited to share these things, or if there is kind of like a darkness in their heart and they're like, I'm just gonna do this to spite everybody.
It
But
wasn't even like a oh spoiler tag. It was just
yeah.
like images. I can't believe it, is it? And it's like, what's the matter with you?
I and so obviously Donovan has mentioned a couple things, and I'm gonna put it at the in the show notes and everything, but we are gonna like go deep into some spoilers. So and hopefully enough time has passed that it can be um allowable now since we're in January. But if you don't want to learn about this, then I just go to the second half of this episode where we will be talking about Birds of Prey. But I was only spoiled on two things, and it was just because of Instagram and that I follow IGN. I saw an image of Sandman, which I did not know
Mm.
he was in the game. And at least he's the first villain, like a cold opening kind of villain. So it wasn't too bad, but I was still upset about that. And so every other time I just kind of scrolled up. And then I don't recall how I found out, but that scorpion got killed. And I think if before you even play the game, if you had found that out, I think you realize like, oh, this is which we're going to talk about him. This is just like not your dad's Craven or not your mother's, it's like it's just a completely different guy. So I lucked out. I got to take my time. I like to do some missions and then spend time in the city, and it was just a glorious experience, which we'll certainly talk about. But I think I texted you at one point because we had been sharing some images back and forth via the PlayStation messaging. And oh, I think you sent me a an Instagram reel about, the PlayStation 1 Spider-Man, which we both love, versus, this PS5 one. And I was just astounded. I think it was the first day where I was just on the top of a building and I could see across, I think the Hudson, the details of other buildings over there. And I'm like, I just stood there for a moment because I thought, look at how far games have come, that we're not looking into fog. We're not looking into boxy
Yeah.
outlines and things. It's just like, it is a beautiful game once you get down to it. And I think the story is very beautiful as well, which we're going to talk about. I do also want to talk about, I've entitled this the wokeness of it all, because I think that's another thing that popped up on social media. You made me more aware of it than I did. I have, The Last of Us Part Two, which I've already talked about, obviously on its own episode. It kind of made me crazy how people were like dead set against something, would go after the actors who are portraying a fictional character, that sort of thing. So I just try to stay away from it. And I didn't realize that people were going after this game as much. The hair thing, Miles's hair, I knew people had an issue with that, which kind of was befuddling. I didn't know about that they had a problem with Haley's level, which is probably my favorite level in the game, to be honest. But I did. The only time that I was taken out of my experience was the side mission at Horizon, where you as Miles, you're helping a guy plan a a promposal for his boyfriend. So
Oh
that was
yeah,
the
yeah,
only
yeah.
time I was like, I wonder what people are thinking about this. Cause I enjoyed it, as a shipper, but I'm just like, uh-oh. But what is your experience of, because again, a little bit more of this, kind of the, I don't know, what were people saying about it? And is that just where we are now with video games, that we're just going to inject negativity into things that are happening that are more progressive?
That's the thing with culture. Like straight up every single thing. I mean, I saw that people, I say people, one loser tried to put, who's from that crowd, tried to put on, oh my God, Marvel made a female deaf Native American, amputee hero, and everyone was like, she's been around since 1999. Like you are a fake fan. Um, I don't want to mention him too much because I don't want to get too far into it. But Josh
Right.
also played before I did, so he could, how Josh just doesn't care about spoilers at all. But he made me told me about like the topic in terms of like people are feigning offense because there's like this boyfriend subplot and you play as Haley. So I was aware of those before I got to those. I think the boyfriend thing was actually the last subplot I did as Miles at least. Um uh I think that I like that this game is so progressive because first of all it's New York
Yeah.
and New York is not Texas. Secondly, it just matches the Spider-Man comics in my opinion. Like if you go back to the trajectory, the Spider-Man comics, they even when Steve Ditko was in the book, as less politically progressive as he was compared to Stan Lee, there were still like black characters in the background. You've got like, the Robertson family, you've got the discussions on race that lasted for a year. I just went over that last year, that there was a lot of that going on. Um, you have I think his name's Max Modell. I think that's the hair's name.
Oh,
There's a
yeah.
gay
Yep.
character in Marvel Comics. You've got Sanjani. The whole. I think Miles has done a great bit for diversity in Spider-Man comics, and I think Across the Spider-Verse itself is a testament to power of those comics because it is just drenched in diversity, but it doesn't really signpost it. And I think that like I understand because I think virtue signaling is a real thing. I think that's not like how conservatives use the term woke. Like I think that can be done in both ways. But I don't think that like it was necessarily done here because for one thing, this series has already made its mark because there was a pride flag. Um, I believe in the last two games. I know for a fact it was in the
Yeah.
Miles game. I
Yep.
believe it was the last two games.
I mean, you go to
Um,
Greenwich Village, you're absolutely going to see that
well,
stuff.
and it's New York.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, like much of this really is people just trying to get attention and kind of stir up the pot. It's not actually fans talking about this. I think most fans who actually wouldn't like it kind of know to keep their mouths shut because that's just not the way that the history that culture is going. So it's not really a controversy. It's an opportunity for people to make a YouTube video about it, but it's not really something that like the creators are going to be skittish about going forward at all. I mean, I wasn't surprised at it whatsoever, and I wasn't even like I like it. I like how diverse the characters are. I like how it just kind of like sticks his flag in the dirt and says this is what we're about. And I just feel better about it. I don't want to play a Spider-Man game where like gay people that's no good. I'd be like, I spent $500 on this,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
fine with it.
Yeah. I do you recall this happening, I hesitate to say backlash, but do you recall this with the first one?
I really don't.
Okay.
And when would it have come up in the first one? I mean, the only thing I can imagine are people who just don't like Miles Morales. Even then, by that time, because I was the same year as Into the Spider-Verse, so
Yeah.
you wouldn't have heard that.
Yeah. Or playing as
Uh,
Mary Jane, but I don't remember.
and I remember people not liking the Mary Jane plots, but that's purely because of like the lack of comparative action and less. There was more of that and less of like Mary Jane. That's a woman, I think. Like it was more of like just the fact of that those are missions that you aren't Spider-Man, and I never minded them on either game. That was also a thing too. People were like, I think even you had surprised at like her character design in this, and I've seen people be really, really mean. And again, the actress had to come out and say that people are like harassing her over like the design, which I think is ridiculous because she
Yeah.
just has her hair down.
Yeah. I think they changed the nose slightly because it was certainly a bit of a redesign. Not as much as Peter, which I've already complained about that redesign. I like the original. After
I
you
had to get
play,
used to that. That took me a long time to actually,
yeah,
even though he was in the Miles Morales game, he wasn't in that much.
yeah,
And he's a bit thicker in this game, but like I genuinely every time because when he's Spider-Man, he sounds like Spider-Man.
yeah,
It's Yuri Lowenthal, it's the same voice actor. When he takes his mask off, he has those kind of smaller eyes and the different haircut. I'm like, this honestly it feels less right to me than the previous design. But whatever. You genuinely can't continue to complain about it like so long after the fact. It is what it is.
yeah. You kind of have to get over it. I mean, and when you're steeped in a world for 20 hours, at some point you're going to let it go. And I think more things are important to you, and that might be the lesson of this whole discussion here. Just that, are you going to be dead set on something like you hate Miles's hair for some reason, or are you just gonna like experience the story and how amazing it was? But I think, obviously people are going to be on social media if they want to be. I think we've had discussions about the toxicity of it, but I do just plea with others, to enjoy something on your own and not let others kind of bug you down. Because I don't know if it's getting worse. I think it's getting louder. I hope it changes.
Mhm.
But that whole thing could have ruined my experience of The Last of Us Part 2. But I mean, as it stands, it's still my favorite video game. And this one did not. As I said, I think the Haley level is honestly my favorite. A close second might be the Black Cat level, just because of the craziness you
Yeah.
do with the portals. But I thought it was so original and fun how you are Haley, and because she doesn't speak
She's
really.
deaf.
Yes, she's deaf, and then yeah, because a lot of our characters vocalize things, so but she's not vocalizing, but you get to see her feelings by like little emojis that are happening. So she like walks across a plank and she's nervous, so you see that nervous emoji. And then just at the end where she recognizes that um this person's not defacing walls but is trying out art, and then is upset, and she speaks out to them, and there's like this coalition that they have, so you really get to know her. And boy was I waiting for her and Miles to get together, and finally they do at the end. But that was honestly my favorite level. I really love Haley. So
There was
yeah,
one thing just real
yes,
quick.
please.
That there was a quote unquote backlash that I when I learned about it, I did kind of get it. I didn't have it really, but like on my own personally, but I understand it. Is that like kind of in the last act of the game, Miles rocks up with a whole new costume,
Mm-hmm.
like a black, red, and blue costume, and he says, "Oh, it's just time for a Miles Morales original," and people like were just really they said that they didn't like the design. I thought the design was like perfectly fine. It wasn't any crazier than any of the other costumes. But what I learned was that like it's an Adidas product tie-in because he's wearing
Oh.
Adidas shoes as opposed to his trademark Jordans that he had been wearing and wore in the Spider-Verse movies. And like the general design, it was kind of like a marketing thing to kind of sell Adidas. And it is his automatic costume for the rest of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I think people just really reacted badly against that. I mean, they come out to like the design. That's a personal thing, but I do get how that is kind of a crass thing that interrupts the flow of the game,
Yeah.
especially if you do have a favorite costume that you want to play. So that I still think that fanboys don't know how to act like adults, but like I will not combat that criticism as okay now this is actively feeling um unbelonging in my gaming experience. So that I understand. The hair thing, I saw pros and against when I was first shown because people think that, and I think now people feel that like people saw Killmonger and Black Panther and feel that those kind of locks hairstyle is just kind of it's kind of like with Asian women and like dyed hair. People find it to be kind of like a less creative design choice for certain people of color. I liked it. His hair's gotten better since in every game.
Yeah.
But that costume, I was confused by it because like in the Miles game, he makes his own costume, and that's a big plot point.
Hmm.
And so I don't know why he did that here, and understanding the reason why, I was like, okay, that is a little silly. I still didn't hate it, but like I
Yeah.
understand people who didn't like that. But I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Do you feel like there's any is the hair thing the negativity coming more from black audiences or white audiences?
I can't tell.
Okay.
There's so many white people who pretend to be black people online. Because there's a
Oh
point.
my
There's a
gosh.
there,
Who? That's so
uh,
weird. No, I
but
believe you, but that's so bizarre. Yes, please.
there's a point in the game when you're doing with subtitles. I think it's like at some sort of a community park or whatever. He runs into the guy who says, "Hey, how those locks treating you?" Like he runs into the guy who did his hair.
Yeah.
So it's not like he just like regenerated into that. So I appreciate. And it's also like I feel that like people who make those blanket statements just kind of disregard folks who actually do have that hair.
Yeah.
So I understand criticizing it as part of a whole, but it's never measured.
Okay.
And I think that like people have lost their taste for measured critiques in too many arenas. So it doesn't to me, you can think, well, some people do like his hair,
Yeah.
but I think that before too long it loses its strength thing to talk about after a while, I think.
Yeah. I just wasn't sure if it was coming mainly from a white audience. I wasn't sure if it was basically subtle racism, thinking about in the professional world where a boss may say
Hmm.
you can't have, quote unquote natural hair, that sort of thing. So I wasn't sure if they were like looking for something that's, I don't know, a cleaner cut than that. But I really like his hair and I think it works well. I didn't that end costume. I didn't like that I was like peeking out, but I got to like the costume a little bit more because wasn't isn't it like a dome cut and so you can see
It's
his
like it's
hair
like
at the
Kid
end.
Flash.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like but it did grow on me a little bit. But yeah, the product placement, that's like I'm not sure about that. Okay, so we're going to go into and talk about the story. My outline, I texted Donovan and I said, this is the worst outline I've ever done. Just because I want this to be more of a conversation and similar to a required reading I recently did with Tom, I feel like it's more focused about the characters and how the story evolves around them. So that's kind of how I've broken it up. But similar to the first game, it is, I would say, 3 acts and you can kind of base it around the villain where it's Craven a little bit in Act One, but then it's Craven Act Two plus the black suit, which makes it more intense. And then Act Three is Venom, who is actually my favorite Spider-Man villain, though I have a sweet spot for Shocker. Uh, may he rest in
Me
peace,
too.
because apparently he's also dead. But yeah, let's talk about Peter here and his character. So he has a lot of responsibilities. I think we can talk about his mentoring question mark of Miles because that's a big story point. The black suit, how he changes, and then I've added Craven and Lizard as kind of the two villains to talk about there. But just what are your thoughts on Peter and kind of how he evolved from the first game and Miles's game and where you see him and does he do a good job mentoring Miles?
Well, I think it's fair to say that he does up until Harry shows up. Because I know
Right.
that like that was one of a constant text from you is that like he's treating Miles so bad. I think that that's intentional.
I know I
I'm
started
not gonna
calling him Spider Jerk.
yeah, I'm not gonna go on a Batman defense here. I think that that's meant because I think Miles even calls him out at one point. So it's
Yeah.
not like an accident. It's meant to be just drama. I really enjoyed, and I will repeat this. And I think Marvel has eventually gotten the hint that this game takes the Peter Miles relationship better than it ever has been
Mm.
in the comics, like bar none. Like it actually makes me mad how much they just like flippantly separated the two. 'Cause I've been a Spider-Man fan for like almost 30 years. And I just don't see Peter Parker finding a kid who's around his age when he got bitten by a spider, navigating his way as Spider-Man, and just not being interested in him. That just doesn't seem right to me. So I loved it in Miles Morales, and I loved it here where like they're both in class, and then Miles is like in the bathroom, can you help me? And they're both like he's like okay, and then like they both run off the roof and suit up and attack the Sandman. I thought that was all just like pure genius, and I think that like I like how it is later on where like they're a team. Mary Jane knows him, and later on when Peter gets the black suit and he does actively act like an ass,
Yep.
they're chasing the lizard and he's like, we lost him. And Miles like, it's all good. I got the checker right here. And he snatches it, and then goes off alone. And then he tells Mary Jane, Miles blew it. He let us all down. It's like the reason why you're checking it was because of him. That was so funny because it was hypocritical.
It
I
was
enjoyed that.
hypocritical. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, he is nuts in the black suit. And it's done well because it is like you see the dynamism. It's not like, oh, he's fine and then he's insane. You start to see his edges start to fray. I was very upset when he was disrespectful to Morales. It's like, you do not speak to the mayor in that way. um yes, I really love this. I think you hit every point that I would, that it's not just, these two Spider-Man and they're like in a work relationship, but legitimately I would say brothers and family. And we already saw in the Miles game that obviously Peter trusts him with this responsibility because he was gone with Mary Jane to Sarkovia, maybe they were. And so
Yeah.
he's got New York for himself. But here I love the first act in their relationship, and especially, yeah, facing off against Sandman because he lets Miles do what he's got to do. He does, he checks in on him, but he's not overbearing. And then he also takes time to educate him on certain things. So it's all Peter who comes up with kind of the sciency way of how we're gonna take down Sandman. So there are also like these wonderful teachable moments. And some of my favorite moments, which happens with multiple characters, but I think just in the beginning with you and Miles, is that if you well, you could be either, that which is another brilliant part where you can just switch characters midstream, which is amazing. But I love the
Mhm.
moments where you could be taking on one of the random crimes that happens, and then if the other person's in the area, they'll come down and start fighting with you. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, and just like
Oh yeah.
you're just like all of a sudden co-oping with the other character, and then at the end, you can give them a high five or give them a hug. So I felt like, yeah, it's very beautiful. Obviously his mentoring does take a turn. I feel it's not intentional. I think Peter has an issue. I mean, you correct me if you think this is a mischaracterization, but I feel like we know he juggles too much, and I think it's just hard for him to manage and maybe like prioritize. And he feels like he chooses one thing in the moment that he feels like is the most important. And when Harry comes back, like Harry is that thing. And unfortunately, he's got to like push other things to the side, which happens to be Miles, which is it's really hard because Miles calls him constantly. And then Harry calls, and Peter's like, I have to call you back, talks to
Yeah.
Harry, and then he's done with Harry. And so I think one time I did message you. I'm like, he just hung up with Harry. Why can't he call Miles back? So that's like a kind of a frustration. Do you feel like this is a character flaw that Peter has had throughout the comics where he will prioritize one thing to the detriment of other important things that he has on his plate?
I think that that's a fair criticism, and that is a fair look at Peter as a character who does naturally juggle two things. And I actually think that that's a pretty shrewd observation that like it's not like Miles is a sidekick. I actually got a lot of like Tim Drake Robin vibes from it from the comics, where Tim wasn't living at Wayne Manor and like, he would have his own adventures, but he would work with Batman. Like so, so it's not like, Miles is his ward, but I do think it's an interesting thing that like now that Harry's best friend's back in his life and he's healthy and all that kind of stuff, Peter just is naturally distracted. And that's not even a Spider-Man thing, that's a Peter thing. And it's a character flaw, but it's not one that makes him a bad person.
No.
Because there's still moments that I really, one of my favorite moments early on in the game is because the big thing that Miles has going on is Martin Lee is broken out of prison, and they're trying to save some lives, and Miles is genuinely, and because Miles is the younger, less experienced Spider-Man, he is distracted by that. So I like, first of all, I like it whenever Peter just says Spider-Man, like as Spider-Man. I think it's really cool. But also, I personally don't think that this game captures the exactly the wit of Spider-Man, but I think what was a perfect Spider-Man moment was when Miles is all down on himself and Peter as Spider-Man tries to give him dap, and he's like, don't leave me hanging. He's like, I'm trying to sulk here. Not on my watch. Come on. I was like, that is perfect. And I think that like even if Peter messes up, that's who he is. And it's a perfect contrast to how he is later on with the black suit, that like
Right.
this is Spider-Man. And so I actually like it more. It's like it's like those little character dynamics that are part of the people. Like one of my probably my favorite bit from the first game was that whole texting cell phone conversation he had with Mary Jane. They're kind of, having some crossed communication there. This just feels like the people coming through rather than like, going from mission to mission to mission.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you really get a sense of Peter's heart in this game if you didn't already know it. Something that I really saw in this game, and I feel like there's a tie, I like to call him Bat Jerk, but I feel like there's a bit of a tie to Batman, and I'd like to hear what you think in terms of Spider-Man and his comic history. But Peter shows a lot of care and concern towards his villains, and trying to help them out. Yes, in the moment, obviously, he's joking around with them and making fun of them, but actively caring about Sandman. And I think it comes through also when you're looking for those fragments. And there's, depending on if you're Miles or Peter, you'll have commentary about it, because he's concerned about his daughter. And Lizard, Dr. Connors being concerned about that. Is this something that you would see in the comics as well, that Peter has, well, Spider-Man has a concern for the lives of the people? Because I feel like that's a very Batman thing, where he does care about the villains that he's going up against.
I think with both characters, it is consistent enough that it is part of their character. At the same time, it's not always consistently shown. Um, I think that one of the commentaries on this film Spider-Man is that Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man would be that way, where he would, by the end, he didn't want to just stab the villain in the heart. Like he even tried saving Eddie Brock.
Right.
Like I think every villain he ultimately showed compassion to. Um, Andrews did to an extent. Those are written differently, and I think with Tom Holland, that's also shown consistently, even when it's kind of like fought against in No Way Home. So I think that like it's in the last decade or so, it's been more normalized than not that Peter is more inclined to show compassion towards his villains. I think when he understands his villains' circumstances, like with Flip Marco, he wants to help them. Like if he knows their circumstances, he's not going to ignore that. He's never been that way with the Lizard. And knowing, Flip Marco, and I part of the reason why I didn't really mind that like Craven X'd off some of the villains is that like as fun as they are,
Yeah.
and as great as Spider-Man's Rose Galleries are, if we're being completely honest, a lot of those guys don't really have personality. Like Shocker's never really had an emotional storyline.
No.
Electro's never really had an emotional storyline, and so they kind of vary from version to version, which does not mean I dislike them, but it's not like it's different than like Harvey Dent or Kirk Langstrom. So when you do see Spider-Man extend that hand to characters like like Tombstone and stuff, that feels in character rather than the game feeling that he must just appear heroic. And so I think that it's not like, well, he must be doing this kind of thing every time. Like if he just punches somebody out and makes a joke then leaves, that seems fine to me. But when he did show compassion towards them, I was like, yeah, he is that kind of character. And it feels like these people who make these games are real Spider-Man fans. I would never question their pedigree. It feels like they really are familiar with the character in that way, and that strikes the right tone,
Yeah.
right chord.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, I think it serves well to contrast with what the character's like in the black suit, which is, he's a rough guy
I
there,
should have worn
man.
my black Spider-Man shirt because I,
Yeah.
I I can't wait to get to that part.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about it now. It's one of my favorite suits in comics. And to have it in the game and the power that you have in that suit is just nuts. And they do such a great job design wise, because as that act is continuing, it starts to shift more into the, the Venom style that we're used to, which is matching his personality. So yeah, what are your thoughts? But I will say that Craven fight was really difficult because of the bell and Craven period. But yeah, your
Uh,
thoughts on the black suit. I mean, I will say that the costumes that you can get in any of these games are awesome. I wish you could just have many, many missions after the game is done so you can keep switching them out, because that's what I try to do. But yeah, thoughts on the black suit and symbiote Spider-Man.
well, I think that because this game's Spider-Man suit is like the advanced suit, right, with the white spider,
Yep.
which I, that was the biggest controversy of the first game.
Oh, yeah.
Going forward, to have that design inform the black costume design is fine because it makes it this version. Um, like I like that, and it's basically that suit, but it's just a bit more kind of like detailed in regards to that costume. I loved it. I loved it. I love that every time you're in it, you can basically just destroy people. I did the thing where you're just like swinging very, very high and just like now I mean I understand now comic fans know that originally the suit didn't make him evil. They just kind of wore his body out like a battery. But it is a better idea that John Zipper and company created in the 90s show that like it does make him darker. Because I just think that dark Peter Parker is just fun. I just think he's cool. Um I just think that like I liked it in the 90s show. I liked it a lot in Spectacular Spider-Man. You know, it's definitely it's like the most amusing bit of Spider-Man 3. And in here, my only complaint is that like I wish it was a little more gradual and also longer. Because
Mhm.
it feels that like in the timeline of the game, he has a suit and kind of goes nuts and like from like Tuesday to Thursday. Uh because like he's generally fine in this black suit, gets annoyed during the whole lizard arc, and then it's later on when like, he starts mouthing off to Harry and Mary Jane, which was delicious. And I just
Pop some
enjoy
more pills.
why don't you pop some more pills and say what you really feel? I thought that I even kind of thought that that was I want to say a cheat, but knowing that Harry Osborn has a drug problem in the comics, I kind of wish that was more in the comics rather than him being sick, because I would have
Yeah.
loved that. That would have been
Yeah.
amazing. But I to me, this game, I feel that like I finally because I've always enjoyed the black costume. I feel like I finally understand like this is this is so this is such an awesome version of Spider-Man. And I think what really sold it for me was a lot of the nighttime missions,
Mhm.
specifically the church part
Oh,
where you're
yeah.
tracking down Craven and it's raining and it's dark and you learn about the whole weakness to sonics and high pitch frequency and stuff like
Yep.
that. Felt right out of like they've clearly, and there's a bit where like you go incognito inside the little Craven mansion and learn of his backstory. This had one eye on Craven's last hunt, and I just think that like not enough Spider-Man media captures those really awesome James DeMatteis era Spider-Man comics where they were kind of really leaning into Gothic storytelling. And I think it's just like the same way I felt in the first game that really nailed Spider-Man's relationship when he fights like criminals and like gangsters specifically, like mob bosses. This one knows that Spider-Man is not just him fighting the Green Goblin every day. It's him in various tones. And that whole bit was like, I really feel like I'm playing a Spider-Man, like a true Spider-Man experience, because it feels like this is something he gets into now and then. And the darker he got, the more I think Yuri Lowenthal became eventually robbed of best performer, because I loved his performance. He just screamed so many times. He couldn't stop screaming, and I love him being trapped in the box when the Craven says, "Look what I got." And he has his miles, and like his suit just starts flipping out, and then like when he's like going up to the henchman, he's like, "What?" I just thought the entire time I was just like, it's so awesome. I loved it. This is the most I've enjoyed Craven and the most I've loved Symbiote Spider-Man. I thought he ruled.
Yes, I have many things to bring up that you have sparked in what you were saying. I love the church. I felt a lot of 90s Spider-Man the animated series, from that scene. I think that as well as Spider-Man 3, there were moments where Peter was sleeping and the symbiote is just doing whatever. And whether you like Mary Jane missions or not, that was awesome just because you are trying to sneak around and things are happening because like Spider-Man is sleeping and the symbiote is just destroying these people while you're sneaking around as Mary Jane. And I think you get a sense of like, oh gosh, this is because she has no idea what's going on. But I felt like that was really interesting to be not Spider-Man there, but someone watching on the outside of what this symbiote is doing. I if we hadn't known that Spider-Man was going to get the black suit, I would have thought that he got killed by Craven because I thought that's where we were going. I feel like maybe that's the end of Act One is when Spider-Man is stabbed. I mean, that was a huge moment where he's fighting Craven or barely gets into it really and gets stabbed by Craven and then he breaks off the hilt and it's in there. And that's
That was
how the
awesome.
yeah, that's how the symbiote transfers over to Spider-Man. But yeah, so many amazing things. I was a little surprised because you and I know that the symbiote's vulnerabilities are sonics and fire. And so we had that kind of discussion about, well, this is interesting change, but I think they had to make a decision because there were many. Number one, you have the cult of the flame. So it would be hard, I think, to reason that he has that suit and is able to do all of that with these flame people. And then that whole tombstone or really rescuing tombstone mission would have been very difficult as well. Harry's really in the symbiote at that time, but I think they just needed to make a sacrifice and say, okay, it's just Sonics, which I think it works out. Did you have any issues besides like an initial, what's going on there?
Yeah, the Spider-Man fan pedigree of me was like, th this is a time where like they really should be bringing up the weakness of fire, and that's not as much of a of a promoted weakness of the symbiotes, but it is from the comics, and then they know that. But I think that you pick up a good point because they had that subplot with the cult of the flame that it doesn't really matter, and like do you want to? It's basically, do you want to play symbiote Spider-Man or not? And
Yeah.
I get that that's fine. If I felt less of like disdain for it or disrespect or any kind of disrespect, and more of just like just kind of moving forward in what's plausible in regards to this version, and then there's a different version,
Yeah.
like this version of Spider-Man showed up in Spider and Across the Spider-Verse, so it's cool, but I'm glad that like we both are talking about like there are moments in this game where they should be bringing that up, especially because it is from outer space.
Mhm.
Whatever, it totally works.
Yeah. I think with adaptations, I think you and I have probably learned this, in our old age as we go to see more film adaptations of comics that we love, Birds of Prey, for example, that you kind of have to accept these changes as like this is, it's a choice. I mean, if you can't get over, I guess, the flame, then you really can't get over the fact that it's not Eddie Brock and as Venom, it's Harry Osborn. So I think you have to be
You
able
want to talk
to.
about that?
We
We can say
certainly do. Do you want to do that now? Talk about that fact that it's
whatever
not
you want
did
to.
that bother you? Did it bother you that it wasn't Eddie?
I like you. Brock's Venom is my favorite Spider-Man villain. He just is. Green Goblin is the best Peter Parker villain, and Doc Ock is the best Spider-Man villain. My favorite is Venom, and so I kind of took the whole Harry thing as, well, Harry is the better candidate for an enemy in regarding their relationship and all that stuff, and they've not really established any Brock, so it works better. I don't like the argument that it works better. I get it for the game.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, it works better in regards to an enemy for Peter. Um, I think that like as a character, Eddie Brock is Venom. It's not the symbiote that's called Venom that like the movie says. That's wrong. And I don't think that Venom is like a legacy character that you can just toss around the name towards. So just flatly, I don't care for that decision. I understand it. And I got past it. Like I wasn't playing the game mad, but I'm not gonna sit here and say I really enjoyed this game, and because of that, I think that their take on Venom was the only choice and the right choice and the best choice and the only choice. No, I don't think that. That being said, I loved his presentation in the game. Um, I think that this is clearly sort of its own mini Spider-Man sort of pseudo film
Mhm.
universe. So
Mhm.
they're melding a lot of things. Like the way they did Dr. Octopus was chiefly inspired by Spider-Man 2, the movie. And that's fine. That's their version. And there's enough similarities between the comics and their own making up their own versions that it's totally fine. You get that this is its own thing. So that I totally accept. But to me, it was like I still would have like, specifically when they gave Harry like the Flash Thompson Agent Venom look. It's a nice Easter egg.
Yeah.
Like it's cool. So they know what they're doing. And it's also weird that like you have in the little sticker mode and also the little the frame selection, specific quotes from Eddie Brock Venom,
Oh.
that specific word balloons from ASM 300 and ASM 375 and all that kind of stuff. So it's not like, you know, some executive made the decision. So in that way, I can let it sing if I want it to, but
Hmm.
I roll with it.
Yeah.
I'm not like saying like this is a con. It's not. I'm not saying it's a con. It's just as a personal fan choice, I feel that they could have still pulled Eddie out because he there's an Easter egg in the first game where you see like a letter of a good luck letter from the people in the Bugle, and Eddie Brock's name is on there. But whatever. They're trying to do the best they can with all the different versions, so you roll with it. What did you feel about that?
Yeah, I don't know that I would use any modifier with it, better or best or anything. I think it is a choice. I don't know that we can necessarily compare because it's just a completely different experience. I was already I feel like trained for it to happen because of the end credits scene in the first game where
Yeah,
Harry's in the tank. Oh, looks like a symbiote, so it's probably going to be Harry. So I was kind of already expecting that. I do think it's an interesting angle because it's this game I think is really focused on love and loving relationships and the people surrounding Peter. So with Eddie, it's always been an antagonistic relationship between Peter and Eddie. And so obviously, yes, the symbiote is going to have harness that. Whereas the question is, what does it look like if the symbiote goes on somebody that there's like a strong and loving relationship with, and how would that change the dynamics? As well as his goal, which is, a bit different because it's like it's a perverted goal of originally, the May, what was it called? What's his mother's name?
Emily May
Emily
Foundation.
May Foundation, right? Because it's like, I want to heal the world. And it's like, well, maybe that's not the best way to go about it. So I feel like it's an interesting question. What if the symbiote latches on to somebody after Peter that Peter loves and he loves equally? Um, but yeah, so I personally was okay with it. I think I did text you once that once we see Harry with the symbiote fight with him for the first time, which was the tombstone, I was like, isn't that Flash Thompson's
Yeah,
kind
no.
of thing? So I do like those little nods. So they know what they're doing. I think it would be bad if I was gonna say worse, but really just bad if they were doing these things but didn't like make a nod towards it. Like they were just pretending to ignore it. So I think the fact that they're doing it, but also owning that, hey, we know that this other thing exists. I appreciate that personally.
Yeah, I get, yeah, it's some things just as a fan, I will say, when Harry says, I'm not Harry, we are Venom," it's like, it's an Eddie Brock thing. But again, this is its
Yeah.
own universe. Like the way that Aunt May dies is a very unique thing to itself.
Yep.
So the way that Venom comes about, it's a very unique thing. There's also the thing that there's not a lot of, because they were talking about Harry right now. I forced this conversation,
That no, that's
but
fine.
the Harry and Norman relationship is like the only kind of antipathy or acrimony there was one scene where Harry saw Norman hugging Peter, whatever.
Yep.
And I feel that traditionally there should have been a lot more of that. Should
Mhm.
you do more? Because Norman, in the first game he was an antagonist of Martin Lee, so he's definitely a guy with sort of shady backgrounds, but he generally seems like a nice guy insofar as he genuinely cares about Harry, which
Yep.
is always up for debate in the comics. Um, so they're definitely planning towards Norman in the third one.
Yep.
And I think that this whole experience has made him a worse person by the end of it. But in my opinion, I was kind of anticipating some sort of goblin element towards that, and they really kind of stuck with like the his illness and the symbiote. And again, really, I'm not criticizing. Like that's something that I also don't really care for. Is that like so many people since the Game Awards have come out with their knives for this game in a way which I find to be illegitimate. It's just on a fan tip, uh, observations of zigs and zags as I was in regards to the Venom part more than anything else, really.
Yeah. I guess I do like that it takes a different path because everything was such a new experience for me because I wasn't sure what to expect. Whereas, read as people who have been following Spider-Man for a long time, had this been, a copy and paste from the pages, we would have been like, "Oh, well, this is gonna happen, and then this is gonna happen." But this was, yeah,
Yeah.
shocking because there was a point where Norman seems to be creating Globulin Green, even though it's not called that. And I thought, "Oh, wow, what if Peter doesn't give him back the symbiote and it's actually like Green Goblin now versus Peter in the symbiote," which didn't happen, but I was interested to see what was gonna happen. I feel like that story beat you just mentioned, I wondered if they were gonna build off this jealousy, but because that was the only time that we see that, I feel like you should have just thrown that away because it didn't really do anything. There wasn't anything before that or after that. So,
Yeah, because it's not like Harry at any point is personally mad at Peter. I don't
yeah,
think. I mean,
no.
much of that's. I mean, aside from something that's very natural and understandable, Peter won't give back the symbiote.
Right? Which is keeping, yeah.
Other than that,
Yeah, for sure. I was surprised that Venom killed Craven, so we can talk about Craven and Venom there. I
I
did
love that.
I did like that Harry was still kind of separated from the symbiote because there is regret after that happened, so I did like that story beat. But I was just not expecting that to happen, and, I think you and I joked about Craven very much saying, yes. Wasn't he, like, super excited in kind of an erotic way that he was about to be killed?
I think with Spider-Man, he at one point Spider-Man had him by the throat or whatever, or maybe like by a web or something. He was getting in a vice, and he was like, "Hide," and
That's
everyone
what it
like,
was,
"Hey,
yeah.
yo,
Yeah. Yeah, because
sir."
yeah, we find out, which I guess I missed that particular story beat, that Craven is dying of something. So this is why I wanna replay it, but you find out later, but I guess I missed the point when you should have found out. I just found out via conversation. But he doesn't wanna go this way. He, like, wants to be killed in a kind of in an arena sort of way by someone that means something to him, and we knew Peter wasn't gonna do it, but I was just shocked that I thought maybe he'd make it out, but no, Venom's the one who did it.
I thought Craven was great, but at the same time, I found him to be really frustrating as a player. He was very, very difficult and challenging.
Yep.
And even when you're fighting the playing as Venom, he was tricky. So when like Venom just chomped off his head, I was like, no, screw him, I hate him. And again, I thought that was like gnarly.
Yeah. Would you say this is the most dangerous version of Craven that you have seen?
Oh, easily, more so than the comics. Like this is the most vicious, no take no prisoners Craven, and he makes a lot more sense to me
Mhm.
because in the comics he like is created Spider-Man, huh? I'll go for Spider-Man. I think it makes more sense for him to kind of go after like the totemic animal characters that are kind of referenced as such in like the JMS run. Like think about the people that you fight, like the Scorpion and the Rhino. But I don't think it's mentioned in this game and other characters. Like that actually made sense to me. But
Mhm.
like he wouldn't mean to go after Spider-Man, just go after other characters. I mean, we see it in the trailer, but we don't know how that's going to play.
Yeah.
And I think if you want to kind of stay in fanboy mode, could he really kill the Scorpion? Probably not. But at the same time, how great fighters are these guys?
Yeah.
So I thought that just like upped the stakes a bit. And because they had a really solid presentation in the first game, I I um I was surprised, and I also was spoiling one of them too. But I didn't mind it because I thought that just made it that just made it stand out. And I think that like we have all that in the game, and also him, as you mentioned, cutting Spider-Man in the ribs and breaking off
Yeah.
the handle of the knife. I just thought that this is a villain that in many ways he's as scary as Venom, I think, and he's just a normal guy with like gas that he breathes in or whatever.
Yeah. No, it was nuts. I mean, obviously you saw that story trailer where he someone's hunting him and then he ends up taking care of him and we see all that. The first time I saw him in person as I was playing, I'm like, "Oh, you hairy man," cuz he's like, I mean, he's just really out there. He's got all this machismo. I think when he killed Scorpion, I think that was my like, "Oh wow, this is not the Craven that I think I've learned." And then yeah, when he stabbed Spider-Man. So he was intense. I would say that his fight as well as Lizard's were the two that were the most difficult for me, but his, I think, by far was the most difficult just because he has all these types of attacks. And then when the bell is going off, because you're in the suit, you're having issues, you've got to stop the bell, and he's like coming after you, is very frustrating. But
Yeah. Oh yeah.
an amazing villain to be sure. And then, of course, all of his underlings that you have to fight throughout the city coming after you. Oh, any thoughts on the lizard? We didn't talk about him at all.
I mean, I remember in the first game that the lizard and the Mysterio were referenced, but and I think maybe even Sandman was referenced, but they don't show up, which I liked. I like that. I like that. Like, it's not every villain that you see there, and so I liked it here, where you get into it. All that bit was great. I like Spider-Man investigating his house, seeing that his that Martha and took Billy away. That was great. I liked him, um, how he was realized he was pretty damn big. I love the chase across New York. That was awesome. Those classic Spider-Man comics.
Yep.
I love the fight in the sewer. Um, I enjoyed this actually because like this game actually was pretty glitchy for me because when I beat Lizard in the middle of the cutscene, it just shut off. And I
Ugh.
was worried I had to fight him again, but it got right back to the cutscene. But I loved when like he beats him. Spider-Man's like, "Take your medicine." And he takes the hypodermic and just like sticks that thing up into the roof of his mouth. I thought that was brutal. And then I like the explanation of how he lost his arm, which was that the symbiote ripped it off.
Yes. Yeah. Or he ordered, yeah, them to shoot, which was, yeah, an
Yeah,
interesting change. Because he
that
was
was
more
cool.
just born with that, wasn't he?
No, he lost it in because of like the 60s. He was like a combat
Oh,
doctor,
okay.
and he lost it in the war.
Gotcha.
So the
Gotcha.
idea is that like I don't think we've ever seen it in a flashback, but like it was like shot off or cut off or something like that during
Yeah.
combat.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. It's attached to his arm, and so he orders one of the soldiers to shoot him off.
That was
Uh,
amazing.
I guess it was too soon to try anything else, but there you go. Yes, I enjoyed seeing him. I think you get more of a sense of who Doc Connors is with Mary Jane, and because her story mission was really she's the one who's trying to save him. So I think you get to see him a little bit more. And he's just holding back so much, and he's the go-to doctor for Harry, so that's kind of his big role. But it's almost like this I don't know, like an alcoholic or reformed drug addict kind of storyline because he's like really just don't do this to me, and then they feed him the stuff that he's been trying to fight against. So it's actually very sad too to watch that. Harry and
Hmm.
Peter's relationship, do you think it was too much broski, too much of a bromance, or did you enjoy it?
I liked it. I like moments. People might not like it. I've seen people say, "Oh, now they're wasting my time," but I like moments where it's just the life of Peter going through Aunt May's room and, riding bikes with Harry. Like, in fact, I like it better than like kind of the challenges. I think it's kind of cool. I think it's kind of neat. Um, and I think that like Harry in the comics, I will admit that if you actually look at the history of the comics, it's a little tricky for that so he's his best friend because they were roommates rather than to me, I feel like Flash Thompson is closer to his best friend historically, but they've said it so many times that it's not. But in here, it's nice to know that he was around, and they mentioned him a lot in the first game,
Yeah,
so that this really justified a lot of that. I think the big thing I took away from was like at the end when they think he's going to die, and Peter says, "I love you." I
yeah,
was like, I've definitely not seen that before.
yeah,
But again, that feels like if these kids were real, that feels believable to me, so I enjoyed it.
yeah,
And I really liked his theme. I don't know if you noticed, picked up on the theme, but it was the theme that they played in the trailer at Comic-Con. I just really like that music touch. And it was always playing whenever he was around, and when he was Venom, it was kind of a darker version of that theme. But I like that a bit, and that just kind of made this game much more fun and separate. Um, and I think that like because if we were to take him as Venom, and the symbiote's kind of controlling his mind, the idea that like his mom died of an illness and he's dying of an illness, that justifies him having symbiotes take over the city. That makes sense to me.
yeah,
Uh, I mean, I think Harry is tricky. I feel that like he's generally different in most every version of Spider-Man. And I mean like, Spider-Man comics, Ultimate Spider-Man comics. I think maybe the closest to the original comics is probably the 90s show.
Mm.
And I'm not being biased. I'm just imagining that because I feel that like he's either like the rich kid, who's kind of aloof, or genuinely Peter's friend. And I like that here there was no like sense of superiority. He really was Peter's friend from beginning to end. Like he got him that office, and he thought about him and Aunt May and stuff like that. Like it, I never got a sense of like malice, or I'm tricking you, or I don't mean what I say, or I'm jealous because I'm Mary Jane. He felt like really real, while also not being the same character. So like I thought it was a really solid version of him. I don't know if anybody who said that Harry Osborn is their favorite character. But if we're going to adapt the Spider-Man mythos, I thought he was a solid take on the character. What did you think?
Yeah, I agree. And I think they did a good job of showing, not telling, how close they are, because I think there were two flashback levels, both of which you get to see little nerdy Peter Parker with the round glasses.
Yes.
But, slipping through the school to get a I can't remember what it was. It was for a science fair that they had, and I think they needed backup files or something like that. But just to
Yeah.
see like what they're like, and then you flash forward, and they had broken into a school again, but they're adults and just hanging out and shooting basketball. So seeing that development and seeing how close they are, and with Mary Jane too. I thought it was a nice touch, to be sure. I once Harry led Peter through the foundation and had that office, I thought, "Oh, wow, is Peter gonna have a happy ending where he's going to kinda give up or retire as Spider-Man, give it to Miles, and be in this space and doing science that he loves for a good cause?" And so one of the heartbreaks, honestly, was when that foundation was destroyed. 'Cause I
Yeah. Boy,
thought,
what was
"Man,
it?
is there not?" 'Cause it was such a beautiful dream, the 2 of them having a reunion, and then looking back to their mother figures, and then also trying to put it forward and help people, and then to have that be destroyed, and like both of their futures kind of in limbo again, was really quite sad. I think that was one of the times that I teared up. There was another time once we get to Miles. I thought he was going to die again, and I thought, not again. Poor Peter has already lost Aunt May, but he's, I guess, comatose. Who knows if he'll wake up in the third game. But to have that moment, yeah, and we don't see, I think, in media very often men saying "I love you" to other men, in a
Mhm.
non-erotic fashion. And so I thought that was a very bold choice. Well, I mean, because I think
Yeah.
with toxic masculinity, men can't say that. So to have that, I thought was just a really beautiful moment.
Yeah, it's great. And I agree that like I think it's better that and it makes sense that because Miles is there with his electric powers that he does live. It
Yeah,
actually made sense rather than feeling like a cop out. And I like the fact that he did live because otherwise you would just be repeating the great ending from the first game.
yeah,
So I thought that was the right way to go about it. And also gives Norman uh anger to kind of go on.
yeah.
Not that Harry is dead, but like Harry went through this whole thing and through this whole science experiment, and he ended up in a coma. Like that, I thought that was pitch perfect. Like that really was well thought out through. So I really liked how he ended up. Tragic, yes, but totally logical from the whole universe of the story.
Absolutely. So now we'll move on to Miles. And by the end of the game, Miles, it is clear now that he is going to be our lead in the third game. He's taking over all of New York, so everything is sort of built up to this. So thoughts on his development, I guess, across 3 games. And then my big question for you is, do you think Miles is going to have trouble balancing the responsibilities like Peter has? Or do you think
I
that
hope he
he will
does.
have learned? You hope he does? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Um. Well, also that was another thing that like people, that started the. I mean, when I say people, I mean I don't really think that these people are honestly fans who are upset. Like I feel that like there's a difference between people who are upset about the Spider-Man marriage and then people who are upset at all the diversity. Like while some may converge, there's definitely a personality type for the other. And people were saying when Insomniac said Miles will be the main Spider-Man for the foreseeable for the next game at least.
Yeah.
Like Miles Morales is not Spider-Man. Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Miles Morales is Miles Morales. And so there was a whole thing online for that. Whatever. Uh, I liked Miles in this game quite a bit. I also like the fact that like much of his side plots were generally more pleasant and sunnier compared to Peter's
Yeah.
stuff, which I think made a little bit more sense. You know, and also helped balance the tone of the game. It's not just dark, 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 dark. Which I feel that this game is darker than the first one, which I like. First one was pretty intense. Um, I enjoy how Gonki's incorporated here as well.
Hmm.
Um, I don't I don't know how I feel. I guess I'm okay with it that like so many people in his inner circle know who he is
Yeah.
because I like secret identities. I like the conflict. I like this. I like the potential for dramatic. I guess people see secret identities as kind of like an old timey trope now, um, primarily, but like I've always enjoyed them. So it's odd for me that like Gonki and his mom and Haley
Yeah.
and his uncle all know who he is. It feels like he doesn't really have to struggle too much about that. But whatever. Um, I enjoyed how things went for him.
Hmm.
I enjoyed how his storyline was with Martin Lee. That was a great storyline
Oh yeah.
with
Oh
him
yeah.
and Mr. Negative, and a great thing. You know, Peter has his personal storyline with Harry. Miles has his with Martin Lee, kind of moving on. And I think that he really enhances his role as Spider-Man by going through that. The whole like the guy who shot Uncle Ben was arrested that night. You know, Miles, yes, Martin Lee was arrested by Spider-Man, but with him out, what's he going to do? And
Hmm.
I thought that had a great story potential for him that might have been kind of swallowed up a bit by the Symbiote storyline if I think about it. Like it feels like it did kind of come every now and then,
Yeah.
but it was okay. Um, and I think that the way it ends with him and Martin Lee is really powerful.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
really think that that's powerful stuff, and um, this makes Miles feel older like naturally without just kind of being kind of maturing too soon. Uh, and I think people are worried that he's maybe too overpowered, but I liked how both him and Peter have their own set of abilities, and I never really disliked playing either of them compared to the other. So I think he's great, and I feel that this year or okay, sorry, last year, 2023 was the year of Miles Morales.
Hmm.
Between Across the Spider-Verse and this game, he really has been solidified as a premier Spider-Man in a way I don't know if there's any other legacy character, of which he is,
Yeah.
that can compare, quite frankly. I don't think there's any because I've seen plenty of children separately, very young, and their initial introduction to Spider-Man is Miles Morales, and that's when they get into. And I've seen older fans who know Spider-Man and just like Miles Morales. So I think this game does him very, very well. Um, yeah, what about you? Because I don't know what else to say more than just
Yeah. Just
general satisfaction with it.
positive accolades. Yeah. I wonder how much money Brian Michael Bendis and Sarah Pichelli bring in. uh, Especially with, yeah, now that all of that changed, because initially people weren't getting money for legacy characters and things like that. But yes, I loved Miles in this game. I'm really glad that the trajectory of his character, that you get to know him as just Miles in the first one. You see that tragedy. He's got his powers at the end. Then he has his own kind of smaller game where you get to see him without Peter, because I think that's important that he has his own distinct character. And then here, I understand what you're saying about secret identity, because it does seem like everybody and their mother knows about these people. But I'm glad that he has a support system, that he can ask. Yeah, you've got Genki on the tech side, and then Haley also comes through, and he's able to talk with her as well. The Martin Lee, I would say, is, yeah, one of the best parts of this game. Starting with them having to go to the raft. It was a raft, right? Or was it a where they
Oh yeah, I think so.
yeah, and it's sinking, and Miles has that moment of hesitation where he's like, maybe I should just let him die. Like, really strong character moments. The fact that his powers and Mr. Negative's powers merge, which is just like probably awful for the person who killed your father to have that physical influence over you. And then by the end, where they have to work together, And he kind of, well, first they have that fight and he has to make a decision about like what's the best for this fight because he's about to go after him. And within that fight being very psychological because Martin Lee's kind of like he doesn't know who he is initially, and then he gets down to it and sees, you know, what why Miles hates him so much and who Miles is. But them working together and that moment before the climax of that fight where he says, this was the other moment that I teared up, I can't forgive you. I don't have it in me,
Mm-hmm.
but I have to let it go though, because it'll just like eat him up, which I thought was very powerful. I've spoken about forgiveness on this podcast before, and sometimes you just can't. So it was, I felt like it was very powerful. Perhaps one of maybe more powerful than what was going on with Peters, because Peters is like very action and very intense, but this one was like emotional story beats, I think. I do worry about him as the lead. Not that he's definitely capable. I don't think that's what it is. In regards to the overpowered, I think that maybe might be compensated by the fact that he is young and still somewhat inexperienced. So I think there might be a balance with that. So he won't seem terribly overpowered. But I do, you know, he's already struggled with carrying too much. His mother had that conversation with him as well. There was a weird moment, which when I replay it, I'll probably think about it again, where he says like, what does he say? Something about like I've chosen the more important things, and I was like, I don't think that's what she told you to do. It was I can't remember it properly, but just I just worry about that because he did not have the best model in Peter to, you know, balance things, and so I'm like, well, now we have this guy who probably barely got his application in to where he wanted to go to school. Now he's got all of this other stuff on his plate. So that is my only concern with him being the lead, but I'm sure it'll make for great story moments.
Yeah, I think that like I'm looking forward to the supporting characters as well.
Yep.
Because with Spider-Man, you have Black Cat, uh, and I think at one point Silver Sable.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know, what it's fine, but I don't think she's mentioned at all in this game. Um, and with Miles by the third act of that game, in some regards, for Peter to show up again. But I think that like it wouldn't just be Miles, Miles, Miles throughout the entire time. In terms of like the breadth of the city, saving the city, I think that
Yeah.
like the, not to do him down as a hero at all, but just the breadth of characters that they have at their disposal to kind of augment the experience. That's what I anticipate. And there's also a lot of different ways they could go. I think they've referenced whether they had plans to it or if they're still doing it, some sort of multiversal thing.
Hmm.
Especially in regards to once you get off the spider bots, we'll see how
Right.
where that tangent goes towards.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. Um, so I guess our last character, I don't want to leave her out there. I feel like her story might have been the weakest, but Mary Jane, I feel like a lot of it has to do with where her place is kind of in the professional world and just in her life. And she takes the story beat of the consternation between, you know, a reporter and JJJ from Peter. So now it's like her dealing with those
Mhm.
issues. And then yeah, any thoughts on this? Now, of course, there's that terrible meme that has come out, or a little video image, which I never even thought about in terms of Venom. But at one point, yes, you do have to fight Mary Jane because the symbiote was put upon her. Was she Shriek? What was her
Oh,
symbiote name?
Scream.
Scream. Okay.
I didn't I was not spoiled for that. I thought that was awesome. I
Yeah.
thought that was so cool.
I
I've
did
not
not
seen
expect
Scream since Separation Anxiety.
Oh man, but thoughts on Mary Jane? She had a couple missions. I mean, did you think her story was as strong as the first game?
Remember when I played the first game and Mary Jane's introduced, which is a surprise in the game, and I showed Denmark. He really rolled his eyes at he thought that they were just like completely sidestepping the whole model backstory, and he thought that that was lame. And it did make me kind of think, yeah, I wonder what the impetus is for that, because for her to kind of be this sort of reporter does feel derivative for a superhero girlfriend to do. But I like her in the game.
Mhm.
I think she's well written. I don't think she's ever been a damsel in distress to a believable degree. I think that like she has a lot of agency while we've never had that whole I'm mad at Peter thing. Beyond not beyond reason. And I don't know. I never really had a problem with it. I feel like it's not something for me to have a problem with. I don't like Mary Jane when she's kind of used against Spider-Man in various media. And and when I say Mary, I really mean the comics. Like, oh man, she's at this other guy, or she has her own power. She doesn't need Spider-Man. I feel that that's when it to me it feels like shallow effort. Where here, Mary Jane is the love of Spider-Man's life. That's just how it is, fanboys. I say fanboys, boomers. Uh, so I think she's fine how she's being done here. I really don't have an issue. I think that like her wearing a yellow sweater was a nod to the '90s show. Um, which they definitely have in cases because you have that one shade of the black costume and like the blue and red design, which I thought was great.
Yep.
Um, no, I mean I don't even really mind the Mary Jane issues or side plots and storylines or the Mary Jane challenges essentially. That's never bothered me. I just I don't know, I just don't really have a problem with her presentation, nor do I feel like I should. Um, I I like the whole thing from the comics, but if this is something doing something different, it's fine for what it is. So I did I love it as much as the other stuff? Well, I mean, no, because I don't play as her as much, but
Yeah.
she's cool. I mean, I thought she was fine. I thought she was
Yeah.
fine. If someone wants to say, now let's talk about like the problem of the game, which is Mary Jane Watson, I would fight them on that because it just did not register that way to me.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I think I enjoy her presentation and her story more in the first one, but I think yeah, I have no problems. I would say with her story beats. I think it shows that she's trying to figure out her life. She might be less of a partner than she is in the first game, but by the end, I think that's just other forces that are happening. But by the end, they're really together and we'll see what that looks like. I did find it amusing as someone who is currently recording a podcast that she records a podcast and immediately publishes it. And I'm like,
I
lady,
know.
you didn't make any mistakes. You don't have to edit it at all. Well, good for you, Mary Jane
Well, the intro
Watson.
music. What about the spot? I know that was hysterical, and I think at this point everyone's like that was almost like a joke because there's so many podcasts out there now. It's like, wait, what was that? There was no that background noise.
Yeah.
Your cell phone didn't go off. You're just like, this is Mary Jane Watson and save, publish. Don't do that. Take it off.
Oh man,
Awesome.
yeah. It was funny how she went up to against J. Jonah Jameson, whereas we're used to Peter being the person who's having issues with that
I loved
guy.
his first appearance in the game. That was great.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. Where Miles calls him, he's like, "You'll never believe who I am," and then he's swinging through the city, shouting that he's kidnapped. Yeah, I miss that guy. I do. I enjoy those little podcasts that pop in. Um, Unfortunately, you can't replay them, which in the previous game you could pick them up. So there are sometimes I would just stand there waiting for it to end because if you went into any sort of combat, it would immediately cut off, which was a bit of a bummer. But anything else on Mary Jane or the characters?
No, really, I think that's fine. I think that like the motion actress had some sort of like facial surgery, like in regards to an injury. So that might have been providing a difference between the first and second design. I don't.
Oh,
I,
okay.
she looked the same character to me. Like I
Yeah.
think that it was just a difference of hair. I didn't notice any facial difference, but that is the reason if you picked it up.
Yeah.
Um, but I just whatever. I just hate the people who decide to make their personality to like dislike her that way.
Yeah. Side missions, anything you want to talk about? We have the Sandman side missions where you are tracking down pieces of his being to a certain or his heart, and you get some backstory with him. We also have Cult of the Flame, and I'll also connect Wraith to those side missions. And we have the one where there's a person the chameleon side mission. That was a shock. I was not
Mhm.
expecting that. Where
Oh,
you are tracking down, there's these bots that you have to chase down by flying in their slipstream. And it's people on hit lists. And then you realize it's one person, and it's chameleon. And I'm trying to think what others. Oh, the Mysteriums. That was
yeah, the
interesting.
Mysterio one.
Yeah, because you think that Mysterio is the evil person, but it's actually his associates. So yeah, thoughts on any of those, and which one or ones were your favorites?
I pretty much all those I did after I beat the main story. Um, I will say that I think my favorite one is the Cult of the Flame one with the raid because that felt like a DLC.
Yeah.
That was just straight up another storyline and followed up from the first game with the raid, which was built very well over the DLC. Absolutely adored the first game's DLC. It was just like playing just this. It was like to me, it felt like the next volume of a trade paperback in a Spider-Man story. Just a whole other thing. And this one was a great follow-up. I play as a black costume, so it just looked cooler with a more tense storyline. And I loved the reveal of who
Ooh.
the cult leader was.
Yep.
And I just thought that the whole thing was just brilliant. So in terms of the whole subplot side quest, that was probably my favorite. But the flying bird one, I had the hardest time with because I really couldn't properly steer into the slipstream. The controls were just tricky for me, so I had to really, really work hard to kind of like get used to that and then beat those. But when I did beat it, and that whole thing where you go into the penthouse and hear this narration and stuff and the gas, I thought that was like my favorite thrill of the game because like when it's like first of all it makes bazillion sense as the chameleon. It
Yeah.
makes total sense, but the
Yep.
presentation was cool too. And just seeing Spider-Man from afar in the pine house and swing away, I was just so excited. And of course I was in black costume as well. It felt like 80s Spider-Man. I just thought it was
Yeah.
so cool. It, love it. So I enjoyed all of them.
Yep.
But I would say that like the Cult of the Flame in general, I enjoyed the ending reveal once you finish the Flying Birds with the whole Chameleon Penthouse thing. That one was my favorite. That one I just thought was like 150% awesome. I loved that. But what about yourself?
Yeah, the Camille, I didn't see that coming. I agree with you. It totally makes sense. But I was just like, why am I in this penthouse? What's going to happen? And then as you progress deeper within and all of this is coming out, and you're like, oh my gosh. Because I think
That was a
Chameleon is a,
Kingpin.
yeah, oh, that would have, oh, wow. Yeah, that would have been shocking too. But because I think the Chameleon is a pretty cool villain. So
Yeah.
that was great. I wasn't sure, like the Cold of the Flame, I'm like, what's going on? Because in the game, you encounter some people doing like burning sacrifices to citizens early on. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what's going on here? Because I think you're as Miles when you may first encounter one of these, and even he's like, "What was that? A cult?" And I thought, "Oh, what's going to be going on with this?" And then it gets like worse and worse. Spider-Man keeps getting called the Fool's Beacon, so I'm trying to think about what's going on. Wraith is nuts. You have to fight Wraith unnecessarily,
Yeah.
because there's always that, heroes fighting heroes. And then at the end, where like it was all leading up to him hijacking an Oscorp train and getting some symbiote, and one of his aliases is Cletus Cassie. I'm like, what? So we got Carnage. So do you think we'll get DLC? Do you think a Carnage subplot would be a good DLC, or do you think it's enough to be in a third game?
Well, let me think about this because I'm trying to think about how the pattern was in the first game. Because in the first game, Black Cat clues were littered throughout the game, and she was the first DLC. So they led up to that and they followed up with that pretty quickly. In this one, you have skins for Venom and Spider-Man and Scream and technically Miles if you're in the costume.
Yeah.
And then you have the Cletus Cassidy design. So they could do a DLC with Carnage. That would make sense. Um, I wonder though. Here's the thing though. So like in the deals, so like we are getting DLC. That's not a presumption, right?
I don't
I
know
know
if
they announced
anything's been
New Game
announced.
Plus
Yeah,
because like between this and the next game, like will only Miles be in the DLC? That'll be interesting because I
I
played
think
with
that's true.
Peter that
Yeah,
that subplot.
I
Um,
think you have to.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So like I think it might depend on that, whether the reality of the DLC or how it will be in the other game. Uh, gosh, I don't even know because I'm trying to think of something they would have set up for the DLC because there was a lot of sub games, honestly, like in regards to the Mysterio and all that kind of stuff. So, but I mean, like Hammerhead wasn't in the main game. That was the whole DLC thing. So,
Yeah.
'cause I remember it was Black Cat. It was. Yuri and Hammerhead, and then Silver Sable and Hammerhead again. I'm actually
Yeah.
forgetting because I remember playing against Hammerhead in like one of them. I forget because Silver Sable wasn't the final boss. She joined your side, so I'm trying to remember the events of that. But that's neither here nor there. So yeah, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't know. I really don't know.
No, no, that's okay. Yeah, I just wonder if there's anything you want to see. Well, of course, unfortunately, I should say, of course, and unfortunately, there was a leak because hackers and being terrible with video game companies. But obviously, the Wolverine, that new upcoming film
Yeah,
game, apparently there were no DLC was leaked, but upcoming releases, including Marvel's Venom in 2025. I don't know if
interesting.
that'll be
And you only played him as him like
Harry or
twice.
yeah, I don't know if it'll be a Harry or a Flash. Who knows? Spider-Man 3 in 2028, Ratchet and Clank in 2029, and Marvel's X-Men in 2030. We
2028,
do know obviously that there's going to be a new game plus, but nothing mentioned about, so maybe no DLCs. I don't know. Yeah, because I feel like a Carnage would be a good DLC rather than taking place over the extent of the whole next game. But I mean, with Doc Ock appearing at the very end and having his own plan, I mean, what are your thoughts on what the octopus is up to?
Oh, I've actually not thought too much about that because you have the Seeds of Norman
Yeah.
and the Cletus
Yep.
Cassidy thing and the Chameleon. So that's actually a good point. I actually haven't thought about what Doc Ock could be up to. Uh, because he's got to play a huge part. He was such a gigantic part of the first game.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I don't know because he hated Norman Osborn in the first game. Like that was one of the things he kidnapped him.
Yep.
So it's interesting. Norman Osborn and Otto Octavius don't have a long history, even though it feels that they should. And I actually feel it's right that they should. Like I like that they did in No Way Home. So like, I don't know how they could do. I feel like that would be something they would have to kind of conjure up and write themselves. I
Mm-hmm.
can't really say going off of much what they would do because last we saw that Doc Ock hated Norman, but Norman was the one talking to him at the end. He's like, "Oh, you know who Spider-Man is?" He's like, "Wouldn't you like to know?"
Yeah.
But
And we've already done Sinister Six, so it'd have to be something really big to top that.
yeah, that's true. And I don't think they're gonna do like Superior Spider-Man because I feel that like that will take like a bigger build up. So
Yeah.
I am totally unsure at this
Yeah.
moment.
What's gonna happen? Yeah, well, I guess we can look forward to Carnage and Green Goblin, and then we'll see what
Chameleon.
happens. So the final thing I do want to say for this finale game, another post credits, which I did not expect whatsoever. I was waiting because we Rio tells us that she has a date, so he's gonna come, and I'm like, okay, who is this gonna be? The guy's who even cares who he is? But the person with him, his daughter, is Cindy Moon, aka Silk. So, thoughts on that? Is that just another thing with Spider Verse? Because that could be huge. Oh, what if Doc Ock knows about the alternate and he brings in all these Doc Ocks? That'd be interesting. But Cindy Moon, is that just a tie and like of more universes, or do you think she will kind of be the next Spider Person and Miles will be the mentor to her?
Well, that's cool. It's funny. I felt a little embarrassed because Josh
You
was like, "I can't wait for you to sit through the credits." Just sit through the credits was like 25 minutes, and by the end, you see Miles and Haley and they kiss, and then Rio invites her date in with his daughter. And I don't know if she ever said her date's last name because this is my daughter Cindy, and I'm like, who is that? And Josh like, are you serious? Cindy. I said Cindy Moon. I said Cindy. I was like, oh. So like, because they didn't say Moon, I just didn't figure it. Like, do you see her face? Like, I just thought it was like a girl from the back, but like,
She might have
obviously it has to
possibly, I
be.
can't remember. Yeah.
Like, there's no other Cindy in the Spider-Man unless it's like some sort of like Bronze Age girlfriend. But they could do a legacy thing and kind of because she seemed young. Like
Yeah.
Cindy Moon, I believe is Peter's age traditionally, but like they could do that. I mean, I'm down. I've not really followed Silk in the comics too much, but I do think that she has a killer design. Like her costume looks amazing. So I would be totally for a kind of like Miles training Cindy or that kind of like history repeating itself plot line there. That would be dope. Um, and I mean, honestly, it's odd because I feel that like 10 years ago I may have felt differently. I like a lot of the Spider characters.
Mm.
I like Peter, I like Miles, I like Spider-Gwen, um, Hobie Spider-Punk. I've always liked Miguel. So like none of this feels all of this feels like, yeah, totally bring them all in. Bring them all
Yeah.
in. And we referenced it again, but like one of the subplot or one of the side quests was getting all the spider bots that are around the city with the Easter eggs. And once you do, there is like a sort of a boom tube
Yeah.
that references the Spider-Verse. And Insomniac said that they're doing something with the Spider-Verse, which would be pretty neat. Um, so I don't know. I mean, my brother and I have talked about like, what you do with like the Clone Saga, because you have a bunch of Ben Riley
Oh, yeah.
costumes.
Yep.
You have Miguel's costume, but he actually is out there. It's not just an alternate. So like really they could do anything they want, really. Because they didn't have the black suit in the first game because they were clearly building up to the next one.
Right.
They also don't didn't have never had uh Ben Riley Spider-Man slash Spider-Girl suit, which I love. So those kinds of absences lend itself to being followed up on in later iterations.
Yeah.
Uh, but as far as Silk goes, I'm all for Silk because I think that she's a cool character, and I think that like this game series has done right by all characters not named Eddie Brock. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, a lot of the spider bots kind of, well, not kind of, but they reference other characters or ones that you might expect, like different spider women or spider girls. So it is interesting whether they're building up to something, which I feel like, yeah, Insomniac does not
They
do
didn't.
things
I don't
just
think
for
there was a
fun.
Silk Spider Bot though. They had a Spider Gwen one. They had a Spider Girl one, but I don't think they
Yeah.
had a Silk one.
I'm not sure. I'd have to go back. My there are many cute ones. If they made little merchandise of that, I would get it. But probably my favorite one is a J. Jonah Jameson spider bot,
I know
complete with the mustache and the.
it.
I mean, when I got it, I was like, "That's the cutest little thing."
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, no, I just we this nation is going through it. We both have our own personal problems. But this is definitely a game that I sat down and was just like thoroughly immersed and enjoying myself, and it brought me joy even in times of distress when I would voice chat you and say, "What is Spider Jerk doing? How dare he disrespect Mayor Morales?" But yes, so I
Yes.
I highly recommend this game to anybody.
Yeah, me too. If this game hadn't come out when it did, forcing me to get PS5, I obviously would have gotten a PS5 because Final Fantasy Rebirth is coming out next month.
Woo!
So I would have done it eventually, but like it worked out when I got it. Like, I didn't get it immediately, but when I got it, I like it wasn't too deep of an expense. And yeah, I enjoyed it. Like, I think the gaming experience, I definitely like the first game more, but I really like the world of this game and I enjoy playing it. Once I've beaten everything, I'm just chilling. I can like listen to podcasts and just like websing around beating people up. Like it's fun and I have very little ask when it comes to this game. I think that like it still has my favorite element, which is to take pictures. I love doing that. I
Yeah.
love taking because I feel that like as a comic book fan, you just love the splash artwork, and this one honors so much of the original comic books that to understand that fans love just great shots, that just gives you hours and hours and hours of enjoyment and learning how to do it the best. And with the different costumes and such, it's just I might play it again when we get off this recording, quite frankly.
There you go, yeah. Yeah, I think one of the photos I sent you, which, say what you will about X Twitter, I am sad. I understand why they did it and good for them, but the fact that PlayStation disconnected the chance to, share photos, I do mourn that loss. But I think one image I found because I was just swinging through and there's like a graffitied image of a baby JJJ in a diaper with a cigar, and I was like, "I'm gonna send this to Donovan." So, any fun moments with, yeah, J. Jonah Jameson. Well, any final thoughts?
I really like this game.
Yeah.
You're like a 9 out of 10 at best. Because I know that like I had a much more cohesive game experience the first one. So because of that, I might be missing some things. It's not as it wasn't as the exact same experience, but I still really love it. and I'm looking forward to the next one. Even though I understand that Brian Itahar came out and
Mm,
said that like ultimately they were kind of rushed on it,
mm,
and so 2028 they can take as much time as they need
yeah.
to refine it if they want to. I'm not mad at it whatsoever. As I still have this to play, and I really enjoy it. And I feel that like because I never really played the Arkham games. I have Arkham Asylum. I
Mm,
didn't get very far into it just 'cause I got distracted with my PS3. So I don't have that gaming experience. This is definitely my fanboy gaming experience that I cherish going through again. Yeah.
yeah. I wonder, did he explain why he was rushed? Is because of a fear of hackers or just
They
like
said
there's
that
pressure to
like
put it out?
there was a key quote as I'm not seeing the entire interview, and he actually was kind of speaking in vagaries, but like basically the back half of the game. I think once like Harry is Venom, it's implied that like the resolution, like basically they kind of rushed to speed it up, and he kind of regretted that. I think it's definitely like the latter half rather than like kind of lead up to it.
Gotcha.
I should look at it again and send that interview to you. But Matt, I do enjoy. I mean, choices were made, but like I'm not like crossing my arms at it. I as a professional Spider-Man fan,
Yeah.
this gets an A from me.
Yeah, for sure. I think, when the PlayStation 5 came out, the question was like, how long can I wait? And which game was going to be the one to kind of push me over. And I figured it was either going to be this or a Naughty Dog game. And so I'm not mad that it's this. Again, thank you to my mysterious benefactor. But yeah, well worth it for sure. And yeah, like I said, I love it. I think I second you that the first game I might like it slightly more, but I'm not going to complain about any of the stuff that goes down here. And I'm looking forward to seeing what 3 looks like, and I hope I get to play more as Haley. Every time, like, Haley popped up, I was like, "Oh, Haley." I just think she's the cutest, and I appreciate her activism and, can't wait to see more shipping between those 2, so that was something that brought joy to my life. But, yes. Okay, so Donovan and I are gonna take a break, and when we come back, we're gonna talk about Birds of Prey, so guess if you've waited an hour and a half, now you can fast forward to all that. Birds of Prey number 5. But first, Zaius's Radio Hour featuring Burning, which is also the theme song of Echo, by Yeah Yeah Yeahs. See you soon.